Joining us now, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He's Chief International Analyst for NBC News, and importantly this morning, the author of the new book, The Restless Wave, a novel of the United States Navy. That book is out today. Admiral, great to see you. Cannot wait to talk about this book in just a minute.
Sure.
May I ask you, though, sir, about unpredictability? We know financial markets don't like unpredictable leaders. What about allies of the United States?
Oh, they hate it. And, you know, the saying in finance is money is a coward, meaning it flows away from unpredictability and danger. And it's the same with alliances. And the less predictable you are, the more likely it is that your allies will start looking for other options. And potentially the greatest comparative advantage for the United States is this glittering network of allies, not only NATO, but Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea. Together, we comprise 65% of the world's GDP, Willie. We don't want to scare them away. We want to be solid, steady, and reliable.
What are you hearing from leaders around the world, military leaders, but also diplomatic leaders, about the possibility of Donald Trump returning to the White House, just on that very question of alliances and predictability?
Yeah, precisely the concern. And I'll leave the domestic political calculus to experts on Morning Joe, but in my wheelhouse, cyber, alliances, warfare, all of that network, there is deep concern about specifically that, the unpredictability. Let's remember North Korea. 1 minute, it's little rocket man who's going to face fire and fury, and the next minute, they're exchanging the most beautiful love letters in the world. You can't run a foreign policy like that. You can't maintain alliances, and you cannot be ready for the world that is coming.
Yeah, one foreign capital that would like more predictability for the United States would be Kyiv, of course. Let's turn, though, to the Middle East. We've heard from President Biden a couple of times now in recent days, offering some thoughts as to what Israel's response to Iran should be. He's warning against targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, later suggesting some of their energy and oil production should also perhaps be off limits. What do you think an appropriate response would be here? And we should note, there's no sense at all that Prime Minister Netanyahu will listen to President Biden.
Your final comment is quite correct. I think there are three big target sets, Jonathan. One, you mentioned the nuclear facilities. The problem there is it's an incredibly hard target. They're deeply buried under granite. They're scattered around Iran, which is 3 times the size of Texas. Very hard target set. You mentioned energy. Problem there, Iran produces 5% of the world's oil and gas and energy, and therefore you're going to kind of bend, if not crack, the global economy by knocking that out. So I think option 3 is probably where they land, which is go after the military-industrial complex. That's where the mullahs are building the ballistic missiles that threaten Israel. Go after those production facilities, go after the storage, go after the command and control, throw in a few targeted, shall we say, eliminations on the side, do some cyber, put that package together. I think that's what you're going to see in the next few days.
What about those nuclear facilities, Admiral? We've heard the former Prime Minister Bennett of Israel say we need to go after nuclear facilities. We've heard some people here in the U.S. suggest the same. What's your view on that?
I'm respectful of Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister. He's a serious thinker, and you can lay out a coherent case to go after the nuclear sites now. Personally, if I were advising the Israelis, I'd say it's not time. Go after the command and control, go after the air defense systems, Willie. Prepare, ultimately, if you have to go after those nuclear facilities. But at this moment, in this moment, conduct a proportional strike and go after the weapon systems that targeted Israel, principally the ballistic missile sites.
Let's turn, Admiral, to the book, The Restless Wave, a novel of the United States Army. You bring a lifetime of knowledge and experience to this story.
Thanks.
Your 14th book, your 3rd novel.
Yeah.
I bet you never thought when you were coming up in the academy that you'd become a great novelist, but here we are. Tell us about this story, kind of the theme of a great power war.
Yeah, let's start with a quote from the most quotable person in history, Winston Churchill. He said, "The further you want to look into the future, the more you must want to look to the past, meaning you can learn a lot from history. So the idea of the book is it's a novel, so it's readable. It's a love triangle set against the backdrop of the Second World War in the Pacific. It's about great power conflict in the Pacific. You know, we don't have to imagine how terrible a war between the U.S. and China would be. We've seen one between the U.S. and Japan. And it's a book about, back to Ukraine, Jonathan, it's a book about new technology sweeping the battlefield in the early days of that war. Last thought, the Easter egg inside the book is that it's loosely based on Dante's Inferno.
Admiral, I'm always fascinated by David Ignatius's novels because he writes things in his novels that he could not write. He writes things in fiction that he could not reveal in nonfiction books. Talk about some of the areas that you went into that the readers will be fascinated by that you may not have gone into if you had to attach names, dates, facts to.
Yeah, I'm on a slightly safer ground than my good friend David Ignatius because, of course, he writes contemporary fiction, what's happening today, a lot of it highly classified. Fortunately, and this is another reason to use the idea of historical fiction, in The Restless Wave, we're able to explore how these new technologies get into the fleet, get into battle. And the one I love in the book is the story of code breaking, of cryptography. Joe, it was the cyber and cybersecurity of its day. And you see how in order to attain that level of code breaking, the U.S. Navy had to go not to the 6'4" beautiful looking admirals like Nimitz. They had to find squirrely little captains who probably looked like Admiral Stavridis in his day. And these were slipper wearing, bathrobe wearing Captain Joe Rochefort, who cracked the codes of Japan and delivered the victories at Midway and Leyte Gulf.
A brisk read full of history. It's called The Restless Wave, a novel of the United States Navy. It is on sale today, and it is excellent. Retired 4-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, thanks as always. Congrats on the book. Good to see you.